Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So welcome to Face to Face. I'm sitting here with Matthew DiSero. He's a friend of mine. He's a comic. He's a magician. He's a wannabe politician, or at least so I've understood in the last few weeks. He's getting pretty involved in Canadian politics, and he's joining us today for the next half hour or so just to talk about what it means to be a magician, comic, and I guess human being. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having my first ever podcast.
Oh, is that right?
It is?
My second. So we're
wow, we are professionals.
We are pros, and we're in good company. So
we're smoking too.
So I'm wondering about the decision to become a comedian, the decision to become a magician. And you've said to me before that this kind of work is not what real men do. Why did you get into... I mean, the comedy sort of came after magic, I think, but tell me a bit about why you got into the business in the first place.
Started with magic, obviously, right? I mean, I think everybody, yourself, your listeners probably know you have an interest in magic. So probably like you, right? You start in magic because you're looking for a way to integrate yourself with the rest of high school. And then you don't really pick show business, it sort of picks you, right? So I don't think you choose to be in this, but you do it because there's nothing else you can do. This is when you failed. When you failed at everything else, this is what you do.
So what are some of the things you failed at?
Well, I've never actually had a job ever in my life, but I know that I couldn't do anything else. Right? This is all I can do. You've known me long enough to know what could you honestly imagine me doing? I don't think I've never had a 9-to-5 job.
No, I don't. What about when you worked at you worked in a movie house for a while, didn't you? Wasn't that?
Yeah, I worked there for a year and a half in grade 9, and I quit because I didn't want to bring the 50-pound bags of popcorn into the theater from the outside in the cold.
Because it was just too much work?
It was just too much work. And I started to do birthday parties then, in about grade 9, and I realized I was getting about $125 for that. And at the theater at that time, I was making $2.75 an hour.
Wow.
And I thought...
We're dating ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, but that was minimum wage then, right?
Right.
So I thought $2.75 an hour, but I loved being around the movies.
Yeah, great way to make a little bit of money, almost like a hobby in a way.
What, doing the movie thing?
Yeah, if I was to retire, it's something that I actually might consider doing.
Oh, yeah.
Work in a movie house.
Yeah, you see a zillion free movies, you let all your friends in, it's the best job ever.
So are you telling me that you're just lazy? Is that what you're saying?
I think all entertainers are bone lazy. And myself included. It's not that I'm not lazy. I work really hard at the show business. Yeah. Like, I probably work harder than 95% of the people.
Yeah, and I think I can vouch for Matt on that. And I know a lot of entertainers and met a lot over the years, and you're pretty diligent. And
I get up every morning at 7 in the morning, and I am emailing and contacting people and hustling. And that's part of the problem with show business, right, is the constant, relentless hustle. The problem with show business is it's not scalable. Show business is scalable, but live performance isn't, right? So it's only you. That's all you can sell, and you can only sell your block of time. And then, I can't make money while I sleep, right? Like some of our friends do. Yeah. So you're just constantly selling yourself, and that's what limits you too, right?
That'll happen once you put out a CD or DVD or get a sitcom or write a book.
And I don't want to act.
You don't want to
I have no interest in acting at all. I have lots of friends who are actors, and a lot of them have paid off their house doing a movie, Yeah. But I don't want to do that. All I want to do is my act. I like working.
Robert Houdin said, didn't he, that a magician is just an actor playing part of a magician. Are you?
What a load of horseshit that is. Seriously, it's just... The more true you are to yourself, the better the act you are. So really, you're not acting at all. You should just be yourself on stage.
Right. So Matthew DiSero is Matthew DiSero on stage with props, being funny, interacting with people?
Yeah. Most of my show is interactive. I bring tons of people up on stage. You've seen me. I'm just pretty much myself, right? I'm not
So would you say there's a difference then to being funny on stage as opposed to, say, just being funny at a party or being funny on the phone? You know, you crack a joke to a friend and you get...
It's different. The situation is, so on stage, you've got 1,500 people watching you in a theater, right? So all eyes are on you, so they listen to you. So every little thing you say is... can be funny. If it's funny, they'll listen to you, they respond. At a party, not everyone's listening to you, and I don't really have, again, I'm too lazy to fight for people's attention, so I'm not going to go out of my way to, being funny at a party is more off-the-cuff funny, I guess. It takes a long time to write a joke. I have to work really hard to write a joke. So, you got to write this stuff and structure it all, and even the things that seem ridiculously improvised in a show are not improvised oftentimes. You've got to constantly, I do a bit in my show with 5 people, and it seems really spontaneous, but it's the same every show.
Fairly calculated.
Everything is calculated in the show. Otherwise, I always have 4 women, 1 guy. This one guy is the butt of all the jokes. The jokes are the same.
That cliche about 98% perspiration and 2% inspiration, that's what it's really all about. Is it about the work that you do before you actually get on stage?
Yeah, oh yeah. I think it's totally about that. I mean, you have to work when you're on stage too. You can't just phone it in. People probably know you were a performer, right? So when you performed, did you just go out on stage and hope? No, I mean, you were working, right? Yeah. So you have to be out there and interacting with people.
You, in order to get better, in order to be good, you've got to work it out. Is that?
Oh yeah, these these comedy colleges they have, these schools for comedy colleges.
Yeah, Humber College has something like that.
Humber College has one.
I'm sure others do.
I don't agree with that. You can teach these guys anything, but you got to go out and do 300, 400, 500 shows before you actually know what they're talking about. So, experience is something too, like in any trade, I guess, right? Show business, my end of show business, magic and comedy is not an art. It's not a trade, but it's not an art, right?
I've often made the distinction of, we've talked about it before, about art and craft. To me,
it's a craft.
And I think an art, a comic is, and people would take issue with me or will take issue with me on this, I think comedy is far more artful than magic.
It's more of a craft. I'll tell you, do you know John Wing?
I don't.
John is a comic from Canada who's been living in America for 20 years. He lives in the States. Been on The Tonight Show 6 times. Really, really famous. He's one of the best writers I've ever known. And his position is that it is a craft because comedy and magic, variety arts is a craft, not an art. Because if you look at a painting, you look at the painting and see something, and I look at the painting and see something, and we might see 2 different things, right? But if, as a comedian, if I don't create a picture on stage and have everybody at the exact same time see the exact same thing, I'm a failure. They won't laugh unless, the best comics make everybody see the exact same thing at the exact same time. And that's why it's more of a craft. It's not an art.
So let's play with this a little bit. So I think that social commentary, comedy through social commentary, that's got a bit more of an artful kind of edge to it. So it can resonate for longer. So, somebody like... I don't know. Boy,
like Louis
C.K. I'm dating myself now. Lenny Bruce or Jon Stewart or Stephen Colbert even. I mean, some of the stuff these guys are doing, these caricatures of...
Right, but I want to say, even if it's political, right, I want to go, Stephen Harper is a douchebag because... And then I tell you the story about Stephen Harper. If I don't make everybody in the theater see exactly what I'm seeing, the joke is not funny. They won't laugh.
Right.
Right? So... That's not an art.
From a social perspective or a political perspective or a relational perspective, a comic might make me think about my own marriage or might make Jerry D, for instance. I mean, he does some crazy stuff about parenting that's over the top. Right. And how kids are stupid because of A, B, and C.
Right. But that doesn't make it an art.
Very funny stuff. No, but it actually might give me an opportunity to talk to my wife about parenting on the way home. Or, isn't that funny? And part of the reason why we're laughing, I think, is because this person is touching on something that's real, something that's true, something that's actually happening.
So is that your definition of art? I'm saying, for me and for I guess John as well, and for people who agree with that argument, a piece of art is something that is subjective, but it can't be subjective. The joke can't be subjective, right?
Right. Otherwise, it sort of has to be understood by everybody in the same way.
At the exact same moment. It's why I think variety comics get, like myself, comedy magicians, have an easier time of it than straight stand-ups. If I am doing something with someone on stage, and I'm taking a knife and ripping up their jacket, right? And then I restore it, That's in the moment. It's happening now. Everybody can relate to that at that moment. But if I'm telling a story about something, maybe not everybody. I don't have kids. You do. So if I go to see Jerry D, I might not find it that funny because I don't have kids.
Right.
But everybody sees what's going on stage, me ripping up the guy's jacket. So I have an easier time relating to people.
So I want to talk about you. You mentioned writing a joke is really hard.
For me.
For you. I bet it's hard for a lot of comics. That would be my guess. I mean, you don't...
It's volume, right? You got to write 100 jokes and maybe one is good.
So how do you write a joke? Do you actually sit down and type it out? Or do you play with it in the shower while you're driving in the car? Do you test it out on people at the Walmart? I mean, or do you...
I tested it. I take the earn as you learn thing. So I come up with something. Like I was just working on something about Starbucks for this thing with the salt of sugar that pours out of my hand forever and ever, right?
So a magic bit that has...
It's a magic bit. It's got a Starbucks cup in it, a whole bunch of sugar constantly.
Magic bit, actually.
Traditionally a classy magic bit. I'm the only one, I think, taking it into the 20th century by talking through it. Usually it's done to music, right? I think if you were to do it, you'd probably do it to music.
I'd do it to music, yeah. So just really quickly, the listeners, it's an effect where you take a salt shaker and you pour a bunch of salt into, say, one fist, and then it vanishes, and then you reach out into the air and you close your other fist, and all of a sudden salt starts pouring out of your hand. And so it's an effect referred to as the salt pour. It's quite magical, quite beautiful. And
I'm not using salt. I'm using sugar. In a sugar package, I open up the sugar package. I'm talking about, I'm talking about the sugar, how much sugar is in the coffee. I like a lot of sugar. Sugar constantly pours and pours and pours out of what seems like a really small pack of sugar. The method to make the trick work is the same as you just described. But the point is that, so I needed to write a bunch of stuff about Starbucks. I wrote 12 jokes that I thought were funny, and I brought them on stage, and those that worked stayed, and those that didn't had to be reworked. And I just have to work really hard. I just got to go, okay, some comics can just write it and it's instantly funny, and maybe they know their own voice better or something, or they're just better writers, which is probably true.
Yeah, because there's a cadence to a joke as well, right? There's timing. I mean, timing
is so important. Cadence and
voice, all these things.
And also, like, what words you accentuate. Like, Derek Edwards is brilliant at that, right? Finding the right word that is funny. There's one word in every joke that's really funny.
Right.
And you got to find that, and you have to sort of keep distilling the joke down and take out superfluous words and all that kind of stuff. So I have to work really hard at that. Some guys... I watched John Wing. We worked on a cruise ship together. I saw him writing in his notebook, working out something, and the stuff he was writing was perfect. Already, I just go, I wish I could do that, but I can't.
Right.
So I have to work really hard at it. It drives me crazy.
No, that's interesting. So some people really work at it. Some people it comes a little more easily.
I think so, yeah.
Do you think there's people who can write funny but can't be funny?
Oh, yeah. I think but then there are both, right? Fran Lebowitz, the author, when she writes, which is like never, she's really funny. But then when I hear her speak, she's also really funny, right?
What about like somebody like Stuart McLean? I mean, this
is it, right? I don't find Stuart McLean particularly funny live,
right?
But when I read his books, I go, they're pretty funny.
Yeah, and he's got such a huge following too. But it seems like a really specific demographic.
Yeah, Ron James is like that too for me, I find, right? He's got a specific demographic, and if I read something of his, I'm like, that's kind of funny because he's ranty.
Can you tell this show's Canadian?
Sorry, we're talking about an international internet audience, right?
That's right, global. This is global, baby.
Well, this is, Canada, so we're talking about a small sliver of show business that barely exists.
Would you call yourself more of a magician or more of a comic?
Are you talking in terms of business?
Maybe
in terms of business, yes, definitely more of a comedian. I keep magic out of it entirely.
Yourself more as a comic.
My agent and manager go out of their way to sell me as either a comedian or an interactive comedian. They keep magic out of it entirely.
What about when you've been doing Matt's been doing a ton of cruise ships over the last couple of years, and
so many cruise ships.
Interesting kind of market as far as I'm concerned. You've got this house of 2,500 people, beautiful theaters, and so on. Are you billed there more as a comic?
I am billed as a comedy magician on those ships because they differentiate. I'm a headliner on, say, Wednesday night. They have a comedy magician. The next night they might have a comedian. They might have a comedy juggler. Everybody has a comedy element to them, right? So they distinguish it that way. And in those things, I would rather not be labeled as a magician because my show is not dirty and there's nothing really offensive in my show. But if there are children in the show, it's detrimental to my performance.
Right.
If there's sexual innuendo, which there is a fair bit of in my show, people will look at their kid before they laugh. They want to see if it's okay.
Right.
So I don't want any children there. And when you have the word magic on the billboard outside of the theater, people go, oh, there's magic. I can bring my kid.
And that's something that's infuriated me, having done magic for so many years and not so much anymore, from a performance perspective.
I'm glad you got out.
But
no, truly, you're lucky.
There seemed to be, and still does, when people find out, there's this connotation to magic that, oh, you know what, the kids love us.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where
it was really cute.
Yeah.
When somebody, and that's how you know you have not done well.
What was interesting to me is adults would come up to you and shake your hand and go, "Oh, the kids had a great time," and they've got a smile and they're beaming from ear to ear, and they had a great time too, but they don't want to admit to it.
Yeah, but when they say that to me, they might as well just punch me in the cock. Because it's the most offensive thing.
So that wasn't sexual innuendo?
No, that was right in your face.
That was in your face.
That I make no bones about that. I don't apologize for that. That's
apology accepted.
But I hate. So I would rather not have magic associate. And also, most of my work is corporate in nature, right after dinner corporate events. And no company goes and calls an entertainment agent saying, we want or very few, very rarely they call up and say, we're looking for a magician because the association is with birthday parties and this kind of stuff. People call for a comedian. But at the same time, I have to be as funny as the comedians. I think I've done comedy festivals and I've had to work with some of the best guys in the country. And you've got to be as funny as them, right? So
what about... I used to hear comics. I've worked with props as a magician all my life, cards and coins and hats and canes and candles and things like that.
You had a beautiful act.
Thank you. So comics, though, comedian magicians, for them, there seems to be a lack of respect. Is that true still?
As well, there should be.
Yeah?
Yeah, there should be. There should be. Because magicians don't write anything, hardly ever. They have nothing to say.
But even a comedian magician, I remember, was looked sort of down upon because they were relying on their props. Props were just a crutch for a comedian magician.
Well,
right?
I think that's what they said. But what they're really so I say this about John Wing all the time. I had this experience. I hope John never hears this, but it's true. So the first time he ever saw me in a theater, did I ever tell you this story? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know.
He saw me on a cruise ship. First time I'd worked with him. He's a bit of a hero for me. Always has been. And. He comes in and he's watching my show. I can see him in the balcony, and he's laughing at all of the sort of original stuff in my show, the stuff I've really worked hard at for about 20, 25 minutes. And then in order to get into my closer, I do this really stocky old bit. I feel dirty every time I do it, but I just can't figure out anything that transitions well into my last bit. So I do this stock piece, and I do feel dirty about it. So I glance up at John. I see him shake his head. He stands up and he leaves. He left the theater. He didn't get to watch my closer, which is like the best thing in my act. And I just was like, oh. And that's the essence of why comics hate magicians, is because comics, every word that they say, they write and they finesse and they distill it. And magicians just come in there and they do these old bits. By and large, a lot of magicians do these old, stocky bits, and they get big laughs with them. And that's not fair to the guy who spent his whole life.
But to be fair, I think, and maybe fair is not the right word, to magicians, there's got to be as many comics out there that are stealing as there are magicians.
For sure there are, but I'm talking about the good ones, the guys that I respect.
Right.
I would never have. I'm friends with John. I play Scrabble with him every day online, but I had no respect from him in terms of the act because of that
Scrabble
bit.
online during the day, clearly not a real job.
No. When I say I work every day, I work on my spelling.
That's right. You work in your pajamas at your computer.
Yeah. Well, it's a long commute from the bed to the next bedroom.
That's right.
You got to do something.
Awesome.
But yeah, you must be able to see, right? So if I'm a stand-up and I've spent from 20 to 30, let's say, those years, that 10-year block, working out 20 minutes, playing crap holes, and just to refine everything that I've written, and then some guy comes along with a bunch of magic tricks that have laughs built into them because they're just visually funny, and they have these insanely old stock jokes that have been around since vaudeville, and that guy who's been working for 10 years sees it, he's going to go, oh my God, A, he's making more money than me, which would offend me, and B, he hasn't worked for it, right? So most magicians don't work for that stuff. And that's why I honest to God, I try to write as much as I can for my act, especially when I'm, if I'm booked to be on a comedy festival, you can't go out there and do stock stuff like that. You got to go out there and work it.
So were you always looking for a laugh?
Am I always looking? You mean on stage or off? On stage, always.
Yeah, on stage, always.
Always looking for a laugh.
Of course, that makes sense. You're getting paid to be funny. You're trying to entertain.
But like every other human, some days you're not on. and I feel myself
But what
flagging.
about it? Christmas parties, birthday parties. You're hanging out with a group of friends. Are you looking for the line?
No,
No.
never. I was at a party last night with my girlfriend's family.
So there is a bit of distinction then between
I don't want to be.
DiSero on stage and DiSero live.
Well, if somebody were to say something
Live
last
on
night,
stage and live.
live on stage and live at the party.
Yeah.
But like stuff came up last night, and I had some funny lines that I said off the cuff. But that could just be like you or anybody else, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going out of my way to have people walk away going, God, he was insanely funny. I'm not that insecure.
You remember Gene Sneed?
I do.
Who was a ventriloquist, Toronto Canadian guy who passed away a couple of years ago. But he used to always maintain that, and I think I asked you this question a little bit earlier, or at least implicitly.
I might have avoided it. I'm sorry.
You probably did. There's a distinction between being funny at a party and being funny on stage. And just because you're funny at a party, or you're the class clown, or you're the funny guy, doesn't mean that's going to necessarily translate onto stage. It takes a different skill, it takes a different understanding, a different chop, and Gene was really big on that, and you got to respect him. I mean, he almost came out of vaudeville, for heaven's sakes. I mean, he pretty much was working vaudeville.
I also think too, if you do this for a living, right? It's like you're an electrician, right? The last thing I want to, though I do it all the time, the last thing I want to do is on your off hours say, hey, can you come to my house and wire this light?
Yeah.
And I feel that way about I perform enough that I don't need to be the star of anything, right? So if something funny comes up, I'll say
it's like
what I think is funny.
I used to still do. We'll go to. I was at a very serious event recently, facilitating it, and somebody found out I was a magician, and we're in the middle of a pretty heavy dialogue, and we're coming to the close of a 2-day conference together, and this guy knows, hey, well, I'm still waiting for the magic.
Well, this is it. It's so empty and vacuous magic.
Yeah.
This is, and I'm sure that some magician is going to hear this and just completely freak out, but there's nothing substantive that magic brings to the table. And it's a problem because sometimes I have things I would actually like to talk about.
Yeah.
Magic is limiting. So if I were a stand-up, I could go, here is my position on the teacher strike, which is happening right now. And then I would make some jokes.
Have an opinion about the teacher strike. In my intro, I should have said, amongst other things, he's loves film and video games and sci-fi and Doctor Who. You name it, Star Wars. Yeah, the list goes on. A man of varied interests, but also a man of varied opinions. So.
Lots of, as everybody has and should have.
Yeah, but you're willing to voice them in a way that a lot of people aren't.
I will voice the opinion when it comes up. Although last night, for example, I'm not always pro-teacher. Sometimes I am, sometimes not. But it came up last night, and I just bowed out of that. But if I were a straight stand-up, at least I could go, hey, I'm doing this stuff about... I'm stating my opinion, and there's a punchline at the end of it, right? I can't do that with magic. There's no way for magic to facilitate any kind of opinion. Or if it has happened, I haven't seen it. And I've been involved with magic for over 20 years. Have you ever seen it? I don't think I've never seen it make any kind of serious social commentary.
Right.
And that's why I respect straight stand-ups much more.
Right, because they're actually trying to say something.
Well, not always, but they can.
And yet it's not art as far as you're concerned.
No, it's not. It's a craft.
They have the ability to speak to a broader audience. It's not just entertainment.
Well, they can use that craft to make social commentary.
Jon Stewart.
That's not art, though, right? It is a craft.
No, I can't think of a comic right now out there who's making as much of a statement as Stewart is. I mean, I love the stuff that he does, and yet
his writing staff of 17 also helps.
People, yeah, but the budget he's got is huge. But his ability to be funny, to be on, to make social commentary, and then to switch
one of my
gears
favorites.
And interview a Republican politician and actually show the guy respect and draw some really interesting stuff out of him who's written some...
That is what I would love to do. And I have it within me to do that. And that is exactly what I've always wanted to be like not a talk show. I'd actually like to be more like a Paul Daniels. If I could, that would be my dream job. But I would love to be able to do something like that. But magic will never get me there. And as long as I use props in my act, I'll never even be considered for that. Because people just don't see the personality, they don't see anything, right? It's very limiting.
It sounds to me like we could certainly draw some lessons out of this already. But what have you learned about? I don't know. It sounds kind of corny, but what have you learned about life? What have you learned about other people by spending a lot of time on stage, a lot of time traveling? I mean, that's a whole other sort of...
I could tell you a lot about traveling, certainly, but...
The traveling side of it is more of a job in some regards than the actual performance.
I oftentimes say I am paid to travel, and I am, even for performance performance. I'm paid to wait. So I may be booked for 45 minutes, but I got to be there 2 hours
like
ahead.
Military, you run everywhere, and then you just got to stand in line and wait.
You just hurry up and wait. I wait professionally.
Right.
That's that's
and you're paid pretty well to do it.
And you get paid handsomely to do it. So I don't ever gripe about that. The money is certainly nice. I'm lucky too in that I am very well paid compared to a lot of the guys. So I do bitch because that's my nature.
Right.
But I shouldn't.
Guys in showbiz.
Well, you know what I mean. You shouldn't be that way, but we are the whiniest people in show business. David and I were on a show together once. I think the trampoline act or something that was on the show was like, you guys whine more than anyone. We were griping about the dressing room or something.
We were griping about the dressing room.
But
we were kidding around.
It's a valve that you turn to release the stress of, like, where's the working lights back here? God, these dressing rooms are shit. You just go, oh, it's a mess. At any rate.
This is the worst it could possibly get,
So yeah, I should never bitch about obviously.
So are you able to learn things about people? I mean, are there lessons?
Yeah, you know what I've learned about people? They're assholes. Everyone largely, it's unbelievable.
So you're a cynical comic is what you're saying.
You know what? Not on stage. You've seen me enough times to know I'm not cynical on stage, but I know that people are. That's more than anything. The people, now I've worked for people in 40 countries or thereabouts. I can guarantee you they're all.
And is that because of your experience with audiences, or is that
my experience with audiences is saying that? I don't want to believe that, but I just experience. Right. I have empirical evidence to suggest that people are kind of douchey a lot of the times.
Right.
It's unfortunate, but that is even within the audience. No one is rooting for you when you walk out on stage.
Right. What they're waiting for you not to be funny?
Oh yeah, I find it's combative.
They want you to fail.
Yeah, I find it's combative.
Wow. Interesting.
If you're labeled as a comedian, more so in a comedy club than at a corporate event. There's all these different venues and different places you work. I mean, you're up for a different set of problems, right? But in a comedy club, for example, they're sort of sitting there going, "Make me laugh," right? Whereas in a corporate environment, they don't even know there's going to be entertainment.
Well, it's like doing magic. I remember working a lot of cocktail parties and walking up to a group to do something, and as soon as they knew that you were a magician, you were paid to be there.
Taking more of your time.
Show me something. Show me something that's impressive. Knock my socks off. Show me something I haven't seen before.
You know what stopped me from doing so? Like David, I used to do close-up magic, and I used to do children's shows, and the two. The things that made me feel best about myself in the business was the day I stopped doing close-up magic and taking children's parties. My price went up, I was more respected, and I was mentally better. But the thing that stopped me from doing close-up magic, I remember very specific. I'm sure I must have told you this. I walked up to a group of people and I said, "Hi, I'm Matthew DiSero. I'm one of the magicians." I shook their hand or something. It's 2 or 3 people, and I go, "Would you like to see a magic trick?" And he turns his head and he goes, "No, I hate magic. Can you just fuck off?"
Wow. Yeah. I think you did tell me.
I think I told him, and I just turned around and I went, I always knew being a close-up magician had no profile attached to it, and being a close-up magician meant you're nothing more than a cocktail weenie, but that I was like, this is awful, and I never did it again.
Well, I'll never forget
ever
Jay Sankey, who's not really a well-known magician in the real world, but certainly
but he's the Stephen King of magic.
He really is, and I remember him telling me about one performance he was at, and how he just couldn't find that all-important
the first crowd
to approach and sort of break the ice. And I mean, it's a pretty interesting lesson, I think, for business people, for teachers, just about the approach and about how.
Well, you got to look for the first laugh, right, when you're on stage. That's again. See, it's like you're storming the beach at Normandy when you walk out to center ice on stage, and you get 30 seconds. You know from doing your type of act, you get 30 seconds. They size you up before you've said anything, anyways.
Yeah, sure.
And then if you're not funny in the first 30 seconds, they're just like, really? You get so little time to make that impression, right? So it's quite combative, and you're making. Especially in terms of comedy, you're making like 100 little decisions and tweaking and changing stuff all at the same time. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like a surgeon.
I guess I'm not good enough to be a surgeon. You're making decisions.
You're making crazy decisions, I would imagine. I mean, maybe the analogy doesn't play out in full.
I would liken it more to a Jenga game. You know what I mean? You got to make decisions on the fly, or kerplunk. Yeah, you know what I mean. So. it's so people go, oh, you get paid so much money, but there's like lots to it. I'm paid to travel. I gotta fly for 15 hours, then wait around and do the show. There's lots going on.
It's not just the performance.
My neighbors all go, you work 2 or 3 times a month. Jesus, you get the best job in the world. I'm like, you don't see what I do in the day to get those jobs and the hustle it takes.
That's the 98% perspiration, right? All the work behind the work, all the work behind the actual effort, and the
this much show, this much business, right?
It's huge. It's ridiculous, and people don't see that. So we touched on it a little bit earlier. I asked you about the whole magic comedy divide and what do you consider yourself more of? And you asked me the question.
My ego tells me that I want to be more comedian. Comics would say I'm more of a magician. You know that? That's interesting.
I think
comics would say straight stand-ups would say, oh, he's that magic act.
Right.
And magicians would call me a comedian.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Right. But you still have a love for magic.
Still love magic. I still occasionally work outs. I still read books, but
so it's been a bit of a
magic doesn't. The problem is the stuff I have in my act lends itself to me, and I've got lots of jokes and stuff surrounding it. But it's very hard for me to find pieces of magic that I can make funny that are suited to my personality and the types of venues I work. So I don't. It's not like I can go, oh, that's a great card trick. I can do that tomorrow, or start working on it tomorrow. So it's a problem, right?
So do you think, I mean, we only probably going to have a couple more questions, because I think, believe it or not, we're coming up to about 35 minutes, which is crazy.
I know, that's the way it goes. I'm going to have another smoke then. I'm doing the Sean Penn interview.
All right, that's right. So do you think? So
I smoke because I hate myself.
I don't want to go too philosophical, but
please.
Nature nurture. So are people born funny, or do you become funny? Is it about the situation, the context, or can I read a book and become funny?
I don't know if you're born. I think you can learn to be funny because it's craft, right? There was no one more unfunny than me in grade school or middle school. I would not speak in front of anyone in grade 5 ever. And when I did have to go speak, remember like poetry reading or not poetry reading where they make you read a poem in front of the class, always the last guy to go up, hands always behind my back when I talk. I hated it, just hated it. It wasn't until about grade 8 when I found magic. I go, oh, there's a vehicle for me to be able to get up in front of people, right?
Right. So
there's
self-confidence builder.
Self-confidence, but that's why people get in. That's why magic is so full of social misfits.
Yeah, it seems to be the case. And yet there's something to be said for sleight of hand magic, for the work that goes into it, for the history.
So much respect for those guys. I do.
And this is the thing that drives me
One of our mutual friends, David Ben, one of the, say what you want about him, one of the most magical things I've ever seen was something he did.
Right.
I think you might have been there, right?
I don't know. What was it?
We were in David's library. I mean, he did the Matrix, the Ross Bertram's coin Matrix, where 4 coins vanish. For your listeners, a coin vanishes one at a time and reappears in different places on a mat. And then he took David's wedding ring and made it go on and off of a wand. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And
both really classics.
Classics of magic, and in David's hands. Yeah, I'd almost want to say it's art, but it's not.
Yeah, I understand.
But I have a tremendous amount of respect for those guys.
So
too bad the world doesn't.
Interesting, magic. Steve Martin. Who else?
Who downplays magic and later got rid of it?
Yeah, Johnny Carson.
Downplays magic, got rid of it.
I mean, there's others. I mean, I was surprised. Who's the guy on How I Met Your Mother? What's his name? Doogie.
Not Doogie.
Not Doogie Howser.
Oh my God, he's so funny. He's such a nerd too. I love him. He's a Doctor Who fan.
Yeah, huge magician. Love for it. Jason Alexander.
Jason Alexander has a huge love for magic. It's a hobby, right?
Yeah. Isn't his name Patrick?
Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah,
Doogie Howser was Neil Patrick Harris. And he is now the Magic Castle. He's society. What is it? He's the president of the. He's the president of Magical Arts Academy.
Deeply involved in the craft.
And co-wrote a show with that magician from England.
Yeah, Darren Brown.
Darren Brown co-wrote a show with him.
Check out Darren Brown, by the way.
No, check me out. Hire me for your corporate events.
There you go.
Don't even look anywhere else. You don't need these people. You just need me.
So
the uncertainty of this business is also what drives me crazy.
Yeah, no,
I'm never going to retire. It kills me.
Well, you're kind of like a real estate agent in a way from a business perspective, right? You work a lot for 3 or 4 months, and then you won't work a lot for a little while.
But the difference is a real estate agent can keep selling houses till they're 80.
Right.
I'm legitimately marketable until 55, probably. Right. I'm 38 now. I don't have a lot more time.
So you can learn to be funny.
For sure, I think you can learn to be funny.
And it really does come through practice.
But the more you do it, the better, because confidence and all these things come into play, right? But you could learn to be funny, I think.
So one last thing. So little things, the hundreds of decisions you make on stage, the preparation, the decisions you make about that, the bow tie that you wear, the suit that you choose, all those things. Earlier tonight we were talking about The Hobbit. How many frames per second is it filmed?
48 frames per second.
Frames. I mean, can you tell we're nerds here now?
Oh yeah, ridiculous. So get me on about Doctor Who and look out.
But that's all about the little things, about those incremental baby steps that the director Peter Jackson took to make.
Because he's
film.
a nerd.
Yeah, total nerd. But the little things made all the difference in this regard. Would you say that that's the way things have played out for you? Those little decisions. I mean, it's not about just picking up the phone and getting booked on a cruise ship tomorrow. I mean, this has been.
Oh no, you got to build a relationship and all these kind of things for sure. Those decisions, and on stage too, right? Like, what's that old magic adage? If you come out with a wrinkled silk handkerchief, everybody notices it, but if it's pressed, nobody notices.
Yeah.
But that's a decision you have to make ahead of time, right?
So it's a lot of choices.
And there's performance choices you have to make, and sometimes on the fly because the audience will change, and then you have to change gears at the same time, and you have to make those decisions, and you got to make them correctly and keep going, right? Do you keep pushing on a guy who maybe you're getting laughs with, you pull back, all these kind of things, right? Those are big decisions to make.
So you want to do a talk show? So let's talk about that, and we'll wrap
it up. I would love to do not a talk show because nobody knows Paul Daniels, but you probably remember Paul Daniels. I have some of his VHS tapes right there. So it was he came out, he did a few pieces or a piece from a show, and he brought out guests, other variety acts from all various disciplines, right? Jugglers, magicians, all these things. And it was his show. He hosted this Paul Daniels Magic Hour, and if I could do something like that, I'd love to be the host of a vaudeville type show. I would be perfectly suited for it, I think, and that's what I want.
So hang on. I think you would too. I think you could do a great show. But I also think, you joked with me, I think, recently about getting into municipal politics. I think you would make a great spokesperson for something. I think that you are a good writer. I think that you are good in front of a camera and so on, and a good public speaker. You could take it to the next level and use that comedy chop and that magic chop somewhere as a public servant of one kind or another.
I would love to be involved. Partially I want to be involved in public service here because the choices are so bad. My friend Glenn Foster always goes, you could fire all these politicians, anybody could do the job because they can't do any worse.
Right. Yeah.
And it's kind of true, and I just go, I couldn't be any worse than anybody else, and I have a set of opinions that I would...
That's your campaign. The politician who couldn't be worse than anyone else.
You couldn't be worse? Hey, could you get any worse than what we got now?
Yeah, there you go. So check him out, Matthew DiSero. What's your website?
Website is mattdisero.com, mattdisero.com. And David and I do a show together too called Mosquitoes Suck. And that website, you can learn about that if you were interested, is don'tbiteme.ca.
And that's maybe a conversation for another time. So thanks, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you for letting me smoke and drink on your podcast.